Elizabeth, if you're listening here, I know you recently shared a story with us about a friend of yours had lived in I believe, if I have it right, a smart home for some 23 years, and they both became very ill. And they did what they could to trying to dumb down the house, but it was essentially impossible. They had to move. And you also shared about your son's a realtor, and there's an area there where he lives that all the homes there are smart, and in addition to the bio effects, I think it'd be interesting to talk about other things we need to be concerned about, where when everything is being done for us, we need to be concerned that we are literally signing away our life skills, our social skills. I mean, who remembers a phone number anymore? And, when we're all excited about all this Alexa and all of the proliferation of this radiation has increased, 1 quintillion fold since the time of pre-man, I understand, something that's just insane. But they're not telling people they're walking into this in this microwave oven of a home, and no one's letting them know what they're. And what do you think maybe needs to be done to help raise awareness for the sheep who are walking down this gangplank thinking that it's the coolest thing? I don't know.
Well, that's the common problem, is that people generally don't become interested in the subject until they're directly affected. They or somebody they love. I get calls all the time from people. I'm sure you do too. And I'm sure Risa does too. Anybody working on this issue starts to get the calls because they're on the hunt for help. And you cannot go to your public health department. They don't know about this. Most public health departments are not talking about this at all. And unless it has to do with a high exposure condition for electrical workers or telecom workers, but generally with the general public, because the FCC says it's safe at the current level. Don't be concerned. There's no official word that, no, it's not safe. That's what we're seeking. Yeah. So people need to understand that that's why they need to take the matter into their own hands. Read Risa's book. There's a lot of detail in there for how to go about this. I really like her book.
Absolutely. And we'll include a link where you can easily order her book as well, with the comments below. With all the devices, the home devices that are in these smart homes, do you know if they're required to carry with it an FCC code?
Yeah. Okay. Anything that runs on, that you stick into an outlet, you have to have, there's always an FCC code.
Okay. And
it has to go through the testing, and then it has to go through the approval process.
Right. So, I just, and you touched a little bit upon too, that I think it's very important to point out the difference between the pulse radio frequency radiation being more harmful than the continuous wave radiation in the home. So that depends.
I mean, it's all harmful.
Right.
It's just that the waves behave differently. I remember when I was going through certification, and what they found was actually the pulse radiation, that the biological effects showed up much sooner. So, typically when you run studies, it takes something like, 10 to 15 years or more to be able to show biological effects. And with pulse radiation, it was showing much sooner, like 5 to 8 years.
Okay, that's good to know. I had heard that. Thank you for sharing that. And, we just kind of talking about the common sources. You both have covered that really well. And, and since the radiation is invisible, would you like to talk a little bit about different ways that it can be detected, like through the EMF meters, in addition to how some people are really affected by it who are sensitive to it? As I understand you are, Risa, that, that can be affected as well. So you have some personal information, experience with it. My husband and I do too. We've felt the effects of that as well. So
yeah, I actually, I had some tech problems earlier today, and my modem, for some reason now, I can't disable the because there's two channels. There's the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz, and I cannot disable the 5 gigahertz channel. The tech couldn't do it, and I'm from the tech world, so I was kind of annoyed that we couldn't get this solved. Because I'm like, I know this is supposed to work.
kind of like with our problems with Elizabeth's slides this morning, earlier today. Oh my goodness.
I want to make a comment about my slides, Christine. I would have said this earlier. Probably for many people who heard me present those slides, they were kind of thrown by the level of technical detail and the language. But I chose to do that on purpose because I get a wide range of inquiries from people. And a lot of times I hear from people that say, I want just the facts. I want to hear about published peer-reviewed research. And I want to know what those studies are saying. That, you're telling me it's safe or it's harmful or it's going to hurt me is just not sufficient. So I chose to do it that way. I hope that people will go to those studies and read them. We do have to become citizen scientists here and understand this issue. And then we're in a better position to protect ourselves.
I'm glad you explained that, because that just does make perfect sense. I totally understand that. And I'm sure that that's really good. And recently, as I have shared with many of you, that Nicole and I were invited to present in front of a group of 100 top realtors on this topic. And during question and answer, one of the realtors stood up and she said, how about Bluetooth? She said, I understand that those headsets are safer than, holding the phone to your head and stuff. So we know the answers to that, but would you like to speak on that just a little bit?
Are you talking to me?
This is open to you both, please.
The problem with Bluetooth is that it can be transmitted right through the brain.
Yeah, because
you don't want to have any wireless, no more wireless devices. Just keep the phone away from your head. Use an air tube headset. Really, that's the safest kind of headset to use, because the air tube keeps the signal from being conducted with the wire. There again, transmitting the energy right into your brain. If you have a headset with a little earplug and it's not properly manufactured. And if you buy a headset, make sure it's from the manufacturer who made the phone, because the warranty and the liability and the coverage then is all together. And what do you think, Risa?
So I actually kind of get around the phone thing. I still use my cell phone, but actually I'll show you, because I do a ton of conference calls and I kind of talk about this. This is what I use. I've just got a little speaker. It's a speaker microphone. It's a USB, no Bluetooth, nothing. It plugs right into my monitor, or it plugs into my PC, whatever I'm using. And then I don't have to use any kind of Wi-Fi at all. So, because I'm hardwired in. And then, one of the other things with Bluetooth is that Bluetooth, your cell phones, over 90% of people that use their cell phones, when you get a tumor, it's almost always on that side that you have your headset or your
Definitely
phone or whatever.
Yes, like the late Senator John McCain, he was left-handed and he held his phone there. That's where his tumor was, I understand.
Yep, and it's these lymph. It's usually they're called right here, these lymph nodes. So a lot of people that get sensitive, they will feel it usually sometime, somewhere around their jaw, their lymph nodes, and it'll just be painful. And whatever amount of time it takes for them to start developing sensitivities, or, X number of minutes after they use a cell phone or something like that.
Absolutely, and I would just I wanted to touch back on that point, but also I love this thing, this retro handset that plugs into the cell phone. I understand it can block up to 99% of the radiation from a cell
Yeah.
phone. That's what I understand. These are available online, and then we ordered this one through Mercola. There are many different types, but the blue tube headset. I understand that the blue tube is important. Some headsets can have the wires in them that
Yeah.
conduct the radiation.
Yeah.
So it's important what kind you do. And we're not selling anything, or we get no commissions for anyone, but I know this is an excellent product of its type. But and then you talk about that some people can get little feelings in lymph nodes and different symptoms. And I wanted to talk about because the symptoms to this radiation are all over the place, from headaches to nosebleeds, ear bleeds, tinnitus, brain fog, etc. Um, you know, and doctors, because they're not trained, majority of them are not trained to recognize or connect these symptoms with this technology. I understand, like Dr. Victoria Dunkley, she writes prescriptions, no screens, no iPhones, no iPads, especially for children. She'll literally take out her pad and say, no
Oh, yeah.
devices. And I love her for that. I just think that's wonderful. But
I have a practitioner who he hasn't done this for a while, thank goodness, but he's actually told his patients, you are not allowed to come back until you clean up the EMF fields in your house, and you have Risa come out and you have her report in your hand.
that's wonderful. I
So
love that. This sounds like Dr. Klinghardt, Dietrich Klinghardt. I
no, he doesn't
understand.
do
Well,
that.
he won't take new patients unless they can prove to him that they have done their homework and they've done what they can to clean up their environment. Do you understand that, Elizabeth? Have you heard that
Yes,
about him?
he's wonderful.
They encourage it, yeah.
His clinic is in Seattle, the Sophia.
Yeah, I know. Yep, I know. I work with them quite a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I want to let everybody know that about 3 weeks ago, there was a big EMF medical conference in Northern California, and I spoke at it. And they brought in scientists from around the world who have published in this field. And the program was designed to attract doctors to show them how to diagnose and treat problems due to electromagnetic fields and radiation, including sensitivities and neurological problems and cancers. There were well over 200 people there, mainly doctors and their associates. And for many of them, it was their first encounter with learning about EMF. I had the pleasure of developing a resolution coming out of that conference. I was asked to do it, that we're going to send to the US President and the Congress, calling for a halt to 5G, and they signed it. They were very glad to go to a conference like this with expert doctors and scientists, because they really don't know, and they're seeing people in their practices with mystery diseases, and that's why they came. And we're going to do it again. There's going to be another conference like this in about a year, in 5 months.
Nice.
Wonderful. Can't get enough of that information out there. And, thank you so much for all you're doing. And, Risa, did you, I have more questions. I could.
Yeah, I do want to touch back, because you were talking about what instruments can people use, or what should they look for if they're, concerned about a smart home. And the first thing, so smart homes, that's radio frequency. So that means that you need to have a decent radio frequency meter to see what the levels are. And, it kind of goes back to the basics, where if you're going to look at a smart home or look at the technology, you need to look at whether or not you can disable that, because some of the things will let you disable Wi-Fi and some of them won't. So for example, Sonos, you can actually disable wireless on Sonos. The crazy thing is that you have to have Wi-Fi enabled. You have to go up. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but it just sounds kind of weird that you have to have it enabled, connect to it, hook it up to your network, and then go into the app and then disable it. Whereas other things like like Nest, Nest, you can actually go into the settings and you can just disable it right then and there. And I've seen other types of, door locks where you can turn wireless on or off. So one, see if you can disable wireless, and then second, if you want to see what the levels are, get a good radio frequency meter. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on, and it's just something that is really important that most people don't know about, is that if the house has wiring issues, or if, and wiring issues could be something like there's just a circuit, like a wire that's loose. It could be improperly grounded. It could have something happen during a wiring upgrade. That's usually kind of a red flag. Or if it has knob and tube, because knob and tube, you're going to automatically have net current or extra current running around. When you have smart switches or lights, if you have a wiring issue, it's actually going to make it worse. So I actually had an instance where a client had, and it was a pretty large house. It was, over 5,000 square feet, and they had put in smart switches. And my radio frequency readings were insanely low, except for, when the room that they had the cell phones on. But the magnetic field was ridiculously high. It was like 10 milligauss average in this huge living space. And then there was this, literally a line, and at the high points, it was 50 milligauss. That's 50, which you do not want to be in a space, for an extended period of time. And it was because of the light switches that they had installed. So that's something that you wouldn't be able to detect with a radio frequency meter. You would actually need to have, an AC magnetic meter to read that. So smart homes can affect the other types of EMF fields in your home, but you have to know about that to have meters to be able to check all the different types of fields.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that. I understand that it's virtually impossible for us lay people to have all the tools that you professionals like Risa have to measure everything. So that's why ideally it's great to be able to bring in a certified building biologist to do an assessment, a written report, suggestions for mitigation, if it's within one's means. But in general, there are tips that we can do to lower our exposures, to protect ourselves, to shield ourselves, depending upon what we're dealing with. But I'd kind of like to touch upon one place where I really felt the effects was in while riding a light rail train, a metal box at rush hour, with everyone on board with their cell phones going full steam. And we didn't have ours. I felt okay during the ride, but as soon as I got home, I was just slapped down with vertigo. Never had it before in my life. I wasn't even sure what it was. The only time I felt that kind of dizziness, I had the flu, but I wasn't sick. Otherwise, my head was spinning. It was so awful. But
was it immediate, or did you have a time delay? Because some people have.
I had a time delay, actually, because we were downtown at a smart meter hearing in the center of downtown Denver, where the levels of exposures are huge. By the way, a wonderful tool I'd like to pass along is antennasearch.com, where that's an app where you can plug in any address in the United States that will give you the densification of cell towers and antennas, usually within 4 miles. If it's super dense, it'll be within 2 miles or 1 mile. And it's not all comprehensive, not all registered towers are showing, but it's a really good indicator. I'd like to mention that. But along with these smart homes, they usually include a smart car. And, a lot of people don't realize that those are loaded. They zap you pretty good, but there are ways to turn off, right? The Bluetooth or whatever in those cars. Do you want to?
Some will let you turn it off and some won't. So again, it goes back to, you just have to do your research. And when you're sitting in that car and what are all the features, which ones can you turn off and which ones can you not turn off? If it's a hybrid car, guess what? You're going to have a huge magnetic field. And the last car that I measured was a Tesla. And in the passenger seat, it went up to, every time the accelerator was pushed down, it went up to 30 milligauss. So even though there wasn't a lot of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, there was a huge magnetic field. And I definitely felt that when when we were driving around. So
I want to go back to the discussion you were having a minute ago about electric trains. There have been studies on trains showing that when people are using their cell phone, even a third of the number of passengers in a train car, the radiation pattern exceeds the safety threshold by quite a bit. And so that's a problem. And in addition, trained engineers and staff who are on trains all day long, there's a greater association with breast cancer among trained engineers and with porters, testicular cancer, because they're standing on the floor of the train, which has a strong magnetic field. And that field goes up one leg and down the other. And they're constantly standing in a very strong magnetic field. So that is an occupational exposure. There are many occupational exposures, but unfortunately our government is no longer researching this. They shut down the capability to do that, the National Institute on Occupational Safety and Health, in 2002 by redirecting the efforts of the researchers to look at medical applications, to look at the safety of diagnostic equipment, which is important too. Yep. But they're not looking at risk for various occupations, especially electrical workers and telecommunications workers, who are much more at risk.
Definitely. I did a video about actually transportation, especially airports. A friend of mine works as a part-time baggage handler at DIA. The exposure levels are really, really high. And one day while he was on the tarmac, he just collapsed. He just went flat. And he was having all these symptoms, and he shared that with me, and I asked him if I could share with him some information that I had an idea what he might want to check into, and because he did seem to have all those classic symptoms. But he shared that with his boss, and they made things better for him. But I understand that flying, like even walking through the airport and through the full body scanners, that some of them, I know DIA, I understand, have the 5G level, although I've heard reports that 5G isn't necessarily out there yet, but maybe they're testing. And
5G is really only used for beamforming.
Okay.
It's not, that's why they're really relying upon 4G. You know, the antennas, the macro towers that are going up now that are being used already, turned on, are generally the 4Gs. And then 5G will be used when there's beamforming. That's when there's going to be instantaneous transmission, which is going to be very fast for people that want to download a video. But an engineer in Switzerland, Nels Kuster, who works for industry and private independent researchers and institutions to design research projects using radio frequency radiation, he's expressed concern publicly recently that these beamforming technologies with 5G are going to be excessively higher than what is considered safe. So wherever those beams are beaming, if you can, stay out of the beam. But it's going to be hard if you want that beam to come right into your house to deliver a video.
Absolutely. And do you understand, Elizabeth, Risa, if that is being used even in test cities with the body scanners? I understand that they are particularly problematic, and we should ask to have the wand checking over if they offer that.
Yeah, well, there's actually one of my colleagues when I was in certification, his wife is sensitive to EMS, and it's because they were going through one of the airport scanners and it jammed. So of course you don't, right? Because you can't see it. It's not like there's a red flag that went up and said, oh, it jammed and you just got super blasted. So she went through, and it took them easily like over 18 months, and they just went through. And again, it kind of goes back to most of, the mainstream doctors don't know what symptoms to look for. And they went through loads of doctors, and then they finally, landed, I don't know what kind of doctor, but they figured out that she had gotten, it was electrical, she was EHS sensitive, and it was from this instance when she went through an airport scanner.
Amazing.
Well, I always ask for pat downs, Christine. I don't go through either machine.
Good.
Machines
Good.
are using now, that use millimeter wave radiation, have been in place for at least 6 years. I've talked to employees of Homeland Security who became so ill they were unable to work any longer. One of them is on total disability now. And they believe it was because of the exposure conditions they had on the job. So when people go through those scanners, I just feel so badly because actually either one of them, but especially the millimeter wave scanners, it's very dangerous.
Asking my
No
questions.
problem. We're having a big conversation. This is a complicated issue, and it takes
really
some
is.
study. So I think it's good to go over things and repeat things because that way you'll learn. And with real estate, having sold real estate myself, my son's a realtor. We've talked about this. It's unfortunate, but really, realtors are not required to disclose these things. As Risa said, there's no disclosure requirement on EMF at all. And because many insurers will not underwrite products, they don't underwrite wireless technologies. And there's even a move on the part of the federal government to hold the telecom industry harmless should someone come forward with a tort claim. That bill has not passed, but there is a push to do that. I think this industry would prefer that this issue die, that we just accept, and that cell towers become as invisible as power poles. That's kind of where it's going, really.
Right. It's just amazing what influence the power and money will have on all of this, including the safety.
It's funny because I get two types of clients. One is, okay, tell me what I need to do to get better, protect my kids, or that I can tell my other patients. And they want to know everything, and they will do everything that they can. And then there's the other camp, which is, well, tell me all about this stuff, and then I'll kind of see what I want to do. I don't know how much I really want to do this. And it's hard because some people just don't want to make the change, or like, oh, I can't hardwire my internet connection, or I can't turn off my modem at night.
Well, in addition, we haven't talked at all about the smart meters, which are being upgraded now. In my town,
the new ones are so strong. Oh my gosh.
We actually did touch on that a little bit. But
okay,
yeah,
good, because
that's Risa was saying.
People who can't afford to opt out are forced to have these, and if they are being exposed, they don't know how to shield. Even when you tell them, it seems like a lot of work to them to shield both the face and inside the building. I mean, that's a lot of work, but the pulsations from smart meters are much more rapid fire.
Well, yeah, and here's the other thing too. If you're in a condo or an apartment or something like that, you're going to have banks of smart meters, whether it's in a room, because I've seen them where it's on, you'll have a bank, on every floor, or it'll be every 2 floors. Or, I had one client, and she was, I think, like 2 units over, and there was a big utility room, and they had a whole slew of smart meters. And my meter was literally every couple of seconds, you'd hear the zip, 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 you'd hear the smart meter burst on it. And there was literally no safe space in her place. She could shield in her bedroom, she could shield, in the living room, but she literally, the whole entire place was just lit up.
Yep. So there are lawsuits.
Elizabeth, Risa, any final comments as we totally wrap up here?
Thank you, Christine. It's always a pleasure working with you.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you so much.
Christine, I really appreciate you. This is hard work. And both you and I had never done this before with the slides. So it was an experiment.
Oh, but you invested so much time and effort to get it right. Oh my gosh, So
it'll work next time. We'll learn from this.
But we'll pull this one out for this time. But thank you so much. And everybody, please click on click on subscribe and click the bell so you'll be notified of more videos coming in to this YouTube channel to raise awareness and share the comments with everyone far and wide. We really appreciate your attendance tonight, and thank you so much. Bye for
Thank you,
now.
Chris.
Bye for now.
Bye for
Bye.
now.